All right, everyone. So we're going to be doing some AEW content. Now, I got to be honest, haven't watched much AEW really ever. And so take it easy on us here as we try to get into it with them switching over to HBO Max. We want to be able to bring AEW content to you guys, but we're going to have to learn up on a lot of this. And so the story we're going to do today is Big Boom AJ. AEW in-ring return date has been revealed. So this is from Wrestle Talk. Big Justice would break the news of the plans to Campbell, revealing Big Boom is going to wrestle in March. Big Boom would confirm the plans himself going on to state. We are looking at, talking to the AEW team. It looks like I'll be at Revolution in March. So that's where we're gunning for right now. Maybe an appearance before that, but that's where we're happening at right now. So I know he got injured at some point, and then he did make a return even with the injury, I think. But it looks like he'll be back wrestling in March. So that's, like I said, we're going to try to get into this AEW content. I figured this is one I knew because I know the Boom guys. I know him. I was following the whole, the match he was in and his injury and all of that. And it looks like he'll be returning in March. So stay tuned for more AEW stuff because we're going to slowly try to get into it and put in the comments below things we're getting wrong, things we're getting right, so we can learn this stuff as quick as possible. Thank you all for watching. All right, everyone. So Edge talked about John Cena's retirement in an interview with Screen Rant. Here's what he said. No, we had talked briefly when he came back there and I was with WWE. He said, how are you doing this, man? You're having half an hour matches and stuff, but we haven't talked about retiring or anything like that. But John is he's thought this through and he's thought of every scenario and every conceivable direction, all of those things. He's an intelligent man, so I'm sure he's already come to terms, and I think he's been coming to terms with it for a long time. I think it'll be harder for the fan base to come to terms, which usually ends up being the case. So I think this is an interesting point by Edge, which is, are the fans going to be ready for this? Because the funniest part about Cena's career is that, he has the typical babyface arc, which is the baby faces have this huge arc, everybody loves them, and then you get to a point where people just dislike the baby faces. They just hate their guts. I don't think heels have this same um, problem. I think heels can really stay heel for like their whole careers, and they never have this kind of burnout period with the fan base. I think it's baby faces; they just get shoved down people's throats so much. It's like this is the guy. He's our guy. He's winning another championship, and I think it leads to people kind of resenting that, and people in the crowd at some point during his career let him know, but then it always comes back. It always ends up being something where they love him again. And I have a feeling this retirement tour is going to be another example of that, where I think the fans are just going to be loving everything about it. And when he officially does retire, I think people are going to, it's all going to set in. Meaning at the beginning of this farewell tour, we're all going to be happy. We're all going to be celebrating it, every big match, every big moment. But then, next year, December, we're going to be sitting there going, wait a minute, that means John Cena is done. Like, that's it. He's not going to wrestle any more matches. That's it for him. Um, and I think that's going to be tough for a lot of people. And I hope what I'm just saying is right, meaning it would stink if John Cena in December does not feel like this year went the way that he wanted it to. Because I think the farewell tour has the opportunity to be real special, but it will lose all meaning if he at the end of this thing or in 2 years is like, I'm going to wrestle like 3 more matches or something like that. I think if this tour really is, the end of his wrestling career, and I'm not saying he can't come on screen or show up, to do a promo or something like that or at an event, but for in-ring wrestling, I think if he wins a championship, sets that record, and in December, kind of goes out on top, I think that would be awesome. And I hope Edge is right on this, where he's thought this thing through. He's ready to be done, and he just wants to make sure that he does everything. He wants to go out on his own terms and the way he wants to. So thank you all for watching. All right, everyone. So here's a backstage update from Wrestle Talk on the backstage thoughts on The Rock and WrestleMania and whether he's going to wrestle. So this is from Wrestle Talk. Writing in the Wrestling Observer newsletter about plans for the Hollywood star, Meltzer stated, there is a belief he's doing WrestleMania, although nobody knows what capacity, and as noted, Cena versus Rhodes is right now scheduled, meaning the original plans for Rhodes versus Rock are off. I do know that people are expecting him to appear on the show in some form. As for wrestling on the show, I even know people at the top who are expecting that, but it's not a sure thing. So this is an interesting plot line here or storyline, because we talked about in our prior video about Cody Rhodes versus Cena, is we have to learn the lesson from the WrestleMania XL documentary where The Rock came in and he changed plans or wanted things to go differently. And maybe Roman was even in on that too, wanting that. But the fans didn't want it. And what ended up happening was the fans were right. And you could tell The Rock was a little bit upset about the fact that, he didn't get what he wanted, or especially I think because the fans didn't want that. But it worked out for the best. And so, do fans want The Rock at WrestleMania? 100%. Do the fans want The Rock wrestling at WrestleMania? 100%. But the fans also, they're not going to want to see a buildup of John Cena and Cody Rhodes only for The Rock to come in and kind of take that. People are not going to be happy about that. So what WWE needs to be doing is building a storyline in which if The Rock decides he's wrestling a month before, then you put in The Rock into a storyline, or you find a way to get him involved without him actually having to wrestle. I would love to see them set up something for next year between Roman Reigns and The Rock. I think that is the most interesting storyline they can come up with. I think this idea of like Solo losing to Roman Reigns and then The Rock coming back and saying, I'm actually the tribal chief or something like that. I don't know what people think about that, but I would love to see that. And then you get to run this whole storyline back again with The Rock at the helm of the other side. I think that would be perfect. But The Rock would have to obviously be bought in for a bunch of, appearances on WWE TV for that to work out. I would love to see that. I want to see Rock at WrestleMania, but they got to do this thing right because we saw it last year. It just, the fans weren't going to buy it, right? The fans didn't want to see a storyline that was ongoing for a year get completely trampled over for The Rock to step into it. The fans love The Rock. They would have no problem with him being in the main event of WrestleMania, but they want it to make sense and they don't want it to come at the, you know, detriment to John Cena having his farewell WrestleMania match not as good because The Rock wants to come back and fight Cody Rhodes or something like that. So we'll see. Thank you all for watching. All right, everyone. So Seth Rollins talked about Raw debuting on Netflix. Here's what he said. It's huge. You mentioned Liv and Rhea. They're going to do it for the women's title there. You've got John Cena. Lots of surprises. Tribal combat. Roman Reigns versus Solo. It's going to be huge. This is without a doubt the biggest step forward in the history of our industry. I'm going to read that again. This is without a doubt the biggest step forward in the history of our industry. That's not an understatement. We've off cable for the first time in 30 years. Going to streaming, the biggest streaming network on the planet. It's going to be incredible. I'm really excited about this. This is the future of our industry. This is as big as it gets. So look, I know a lot of this is probably PR, BS, but I'm buying it a little bit. I really do think, when you talk about the big moments in history for WWE, over the last 3 decades, you go, Raw is war, right? That moment when Raw becomes war and that logo and everything about it. Then the ruthless aggression, right? That ruthless aggression. It's just like you remember that clip, it defined an era. And then the PG era, which people probably don't like. And now we're in a new era, right? You had the Triple H era, what we've had for the past few years, but this feels like the real beginning of it, right? This feels like the Netflix era is going to be where this thing really takes off. And it's like a reset. It's like, every New Year's, we all have our New Year's resolutions. This is going to be a reset for WWE where all the chaos of the last 5 years, all the chaos of what we've seen, all the big transitions, the big merger, right? All of this stuff is now in the past. And what's the future is the product that they're going to put out there. And Netflix offers them so much more than cable could. So obviously Netflix is going to have to deliver in terms of quality, right? Got to make sure that streaming is good because I think people will be pretty upset. I already got one comment that I replied to on one of the videos that's like, listen, if Netflix streaming doesn't work like the Tyson fight, I'm done with Netflix and I'm not watching. So that's a warning to Netflix and WWE. Listen, if you don't get this thing working, people are going to be mad and they're going to just cancel their Netflix subscription and not watch. I think people will, maybe they'll end up coming back, but people aren't going to be happy with that. So make sure this debut goes smooth. But what Seth is saying, I think is real, right? I think it's the real deal. And if WWE pulls this off, I think they could hit a whole nother level. The Attitude Era will always have a place in my heart. We're never going to see that era again. I don't think this era is going to be that, but this era is going to be its own era, and it's going to be its own, there's going to be bunch of people, whether it's they just came into wrestling as adults watching it or, kids watching it, who view in 20, 30 years this era as their version of the Attitude Era. And that is going to be awesome. And I'm happy that we got this channel. I'm happy that I'm going to be able to watch it. And I hope they deliver, because if they don't deliver, it's going to be one of the more disappointing things in the history of wrestling, in my opinion. Thank you all for watching. All right, everyone. So here's an update on a potential match between Cody Rhodes and John Cena at WrestleMania 41. So we're reading from Wrestle Talk. Now, in a new update this week, Dave Meltzer has reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Rhodes versus Cena is now scheduled for WrestleMania 41. Following this, Fightful Select has now added further details regarding these plans in a new report. According to the backstage update, Rhodes versus Cena is the working plan for WrestleMania and has been since as far back as mid November, after it was indicated that The Rock's schedule was unclear for the show. As has been stated various different reports, Fightful reiterated that WWE are at the mercy of The Rock's schedule, and plans could change from Cena versus Rhodes should the final boss become available. However, as of now, The Rock is not factored into WWE creative plans for WrestleMania 41. According to the report, many close to Rhodes had been hoping a match against Cena would take place as far back as WrestleMania 39 in 2023. As for the rest of WWE's roster, Fightful states that a solid portion also have creative plans in line for WrestleMania, as well as some alternate options. All right, so I want Cena versus Rhodes, 110%. The only part that I have pushback on is I also don't want The Rock versus versus Roman Reigns at this WrestleMania, and I think the only way we get that not happening if it was The Rock versus Cody Rhodes, but Cena versus Rhodes feels like the perfect match for Cena's farewell tour at WrestleMania. Number one, Cody's a champion. Number two, it's kind of like a look in the mirror, right? It's the ultimate babyface in John Cena versus the ultimate babyface in Cody Rhodes. And I think that's a perfect farewell match. That's just a perfect, okay, this is how we're going to send John Cena off. And the other aspect of this report I want to touch on before, we go, is that somebody in WWE, please save The Rock from himself in this situation, okay? Because we saw it last year, The Rock, and you saw it in that WrestleMania Excel documentary. The Rock comes back and he starts trying to make changes, trying to make plans. And you could tell in that documentary, he was a little bit upset almost because he didn't get his way and the fans wanted it a different way. Look, if Rhodes versus Cena is the plan and The Rock isn't giving you a concrete, this is what we're doing, you know, further enough out, then make a different thing for him if he does come back. The Rock can make almost anything work, right? And I just don't get this idea of, and I understand, look, The Rock's one of the all time greats. I understand where he is in the company, and I get it. And I think he definitely, and we said this in a prior one, he definitely deserves that level of respect, right? Where if he says he wants something, WWE should do everything they can to accommodate him and make sure that it happens. But it's the stuff like this where it's like, I got to read the quote here. Mercy of the Rock schedule. It's like that stuff. I just think it's not only not good for the product overall, but it's not good for the Rock because fans are not going to like that. Fans are going to be upset about that. If they are building Cena versus Cody Rhodes, let's say they're building it all through January, then they're building it in February, and then the Rock comes out of nowhere and he decides, actually, I want to fight Cody Rhodes, and they change from that. People aren't going to be happy. And also, it's John Cena's farewell tour. He should really be the one making the call on who he faces. And I think he'd pick Cody Rhodes. Now, if Rock comes back and it's Rock versus Cena, I guess, at the WrestleMania, that would be pretty cool, I think. That'd be awesome. But my point is, look, it's not that The Rock shouldn't have extra pull, or it's not that The Rock is like, I'm not even saying he's selfish or anything. Anybody in his situation, every wrestler wants to do what The Rock's doing, right? So that's not even really a knock on him. It's just one of those instances of, as a company, just be like, Rock, listen, this is what the fans want. This is the storyline we're going to build. We're going to build you one that's even better, but we're not going to ruin this one, right? To do that. So you saw with that WrestleMania XL documentary, he was not happy about what happened, when he was kind of trying to make, play a little bit of revisionist history, I think, with it. But at the end of the day, what was best for it happened. And The Rock was huge in that WrestleMania. He was perfect in that WrestleMania. And his character has gotten even better. And by the way, The Rock versus Roman will be even bigger because they didn't do it when The Rock wanted to do it. So it's one of those things. Save him from himself in this situation.